voluntary, um, there's still only two properties that
Right,
are in the historic district. And one
right.
of
So
them
maybe
is the
we should
building that
address
I
that.
sold. Sorry?
Maybe we need to address that
Um,
in
well,
the, in,
there was a
okay.
lot of there was a lot of discussion about that, and really, you need pretty much I think it was 80% buy-in from the residents of a neighborhood to really make it successful. But we talked about
Yeah.
doing that in the Belgrove Square neighborhood, um, Willis Street, but we could never muster um, that 80% interest whenever the people
And
got polled.
and Dean and Chris, we are live on Face or YouTube.
Right. Right. So I just have a quick question. So the 80% buy-in, who made that, who set that bar? Is that some kind of,
I think that's a kind of a rule of thumb threshold that people like the Maryland Historical Trust and others who have experience with a lot of different historic districts have arrived at.
okay. All right, maybe we can talk about that at the next meeting, but I was just curious, so. Because I know that's been a while, I believe, since that they tried that, but anyway. Okay, thank you for answering my question.
Yep, not today's subject.
No, 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 I know.
Maybe we just, if we could give it a minute or two to see who else joins. Hi, Tyler.
How's it going, everybody?
Going well, thank you.
Glad to hear it.
Hello, Mike. And you are on mute, Mike.
Sorry about that.
Not a problem. And I believe
That's one of the only times I've ever heard Mr. McMullen muted.
Thank you.
let me share my screen. And then I guess we can get started. I guess with approval of the minutes, has everybody been able to review the minutes?
Yeah.
I move that the minutes be accepted as written.
I will second that.
All right. And everybody all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you. And moving on to the next topic, no old business. And under new business is review and discuss draft sign code sections 164-121 to 164-123. And just to give a little bit of background, I should say a very brief summary, because I would like everybody to just to hear what you all have to say. Under the first paragraph, wanted to hit home with only reviewing with no content of the sign to be in to be in compliance with the Reed ruling. C also does not have anything to do with content. For H on the bottom, this would be when we talk about a requiring data evidence that would be supplied by the zoning administrator. With that right now, I would be in the approved application. This has to do with public safety, and just to let you all know, right here, I just need to add building permit. So all freestanding signs must receive a building permit. So what we do is we contract out the reviews to Carroll County government, and we use them to review to make sure that the sign is structurally sound. So that won't cause a public safety issue. Hello, Dana. And I think we had Patrick. How are you?
How are you?
Doing well, thank you. And then moving on. Down to 164, 122, just adding some diagrams to make things a little bit easier. Picture says 1,000 words. And one of the other things that I wanted to have in here was a chart. So instead of reading through a lot of words and a lot of paragraphs, I feel like the chart would be easier so people can pick their zones, because as most of you may know, the city is all divided into different zones. I don't know if you could see, but on my picture, all different zones in the city, all different zones have different regulations. And with that, matching up the zoning district to in the sign ordinance, so people can easily see what sign is allotted or what signage requirements are allotted to their particular property within, or their zone within a particular, a property within a particular zone. And then about multi-tenant buildings with new and existing shopping centers, and just going down to D, about signs in the following zones, which are basically in the downtown area. So signs can be externally lit, not as opposed to internally. So with, like, for instance, gooseneck lighting. And then I know, Mike, in our first meeting, you mentioned that you like this addition about the projecting signs, to have regulations on that. Currently, the regulations are only for central business, which, as Dean, you know, is discussed in the standards for renovation in Westminster. To have them for more, possibly more of the zones downtown. And then the only other thing, this right here, I'm keeping, that was added in October 2016 by the Mayor and Common Council. So I thought, since that was new enough, just to keep that. That's for larger, like, for instance, the larger big box stores, Lowe's, Home Depot, any store that has a very large parking field, a very big building. So that's why that was added in there. But if any of you have any questions, let me know. I would like to get your thoughts, if anything to add, change, possibly delete. I would love to hear your thoughts. I will be quiet and let you all discuss.
So one of the things that I was looking at is for electronic signage. When that stuff is purchased, a lot of times it's Lego blocked together. So depending on the number of pixels per square inch, etc., you may end up building a 4x8 sign out of 12-inch square cubes. Depending on the pixels, you may end up with something that is built in 13 or 13.5 inch or 14-inch cubes. And so when you're looking at something that has a 65 square foot max, you may be in a situation where you are slightly over at maybe 66 or 66 and a half because of the way the cubes go together, rather than, and it seems to me that within a certain percentage, if you can show the town whose sign material you're using and what those blocks look like, there should be an allowance to exceed by a certain amount without going for a variance. Does that make sense?
I hear what you're saying, Dana. So each, and you're talking about like the electronic message boards, correct? The LEDs?
Exactly. If you've got a programmable LED, you typically Lego block a lot of that stuff together, depending on manufacturers, et cetera. And if you're talking about LEDs that are 20 millimeter versus 16 versus 10 versus they go all the way down to 2 if you really want them, so the Lego blocks that you're using to build these things together change in size depending on the pixel count that you're working with. So they, I see them vary anywhere from 12-inch square up to 14-inch square, depending. And you may be in a situation where, like I said, you when you put this stuff together, you're, if there's a 65 square foot max, you may be at 66 and a half. And if you stay within an ordinance, all of a sudden you're down to 40. Doesn't really seem fair to make somebody do that and have to go through all of the variances for that little bit because of the way the manufacturing is done on these things.
I hear what you're saying, Dana. No, thank you. Thank you for that, for your insight with that. No, that's definitely a good point. Yeah, I know I'll look into that. And Dana, do you have anything you could send me as well regarding some of those sizes?
I can pull some stuff together from some of the different manufacturers just to show how they put their stuff together, and show you some of the variances and some of that, just to say, here's, different people do it a little bit differently.
All right. Thank you, Dana. Thank you. And then we'll look at that. I'll look at that with the director, and then we can, we may, make some changes, tweaks that we can bring back to the committee.
Yeah.
Dana, the reservation that I have about that is that when sign makers like yourself put together a design for a sign, if you're working with a specific module that will end up giving you a sign that just slightly exceeds what the what the zoning limit is, can't you work with a design that, say, changes the aspect ratio so that you would get close to but not up to that limit? Because I feel like there needs to be a line drawn somewhere, and if it's at 64 square feet and you can only go above that with planning and zoning commission approval, or you're in a zone where you're not allowed to go over that, that it becomes a little difficult if there's an allowance in the code that says, oh, you can be plus 5% or plus 10%.
I think if you can demonstrate how those modules go together and why it is. So to your point, yeah, you may be able to find, different manufacturers that might allow you to possibly stay in compliance. But you may also find that, the pricing on these things is all over the place. And to stay in compliance, all of a sudden the cost of your sign has just gone up 30%. And then you've got a business owner that may be in a situation where they choose to either not put the sign up, or if they've done their research, they may just decide that maybe that part of Westminster or Westminster at all just isn't the place to set up their business.
Yeah, I don't, possibly.
Could you make, I mean, or can we make recommendations? I don't know, I guess you can't really do that. Like here are the sign makers or businesses that, can make your signs to compliance. I mean, because you're right, you keep giving people wiggle room and then it can get out of hand. So I think I agree with you, Dean, you have to have parameters.
Well, plus, technology changes all the time.
Yeah.
20 years ago, we wouldn't be discussing
Pixels.
signs with pixels at all, and who knows what we'll be looking at 10 years or even 5 years from now.
And Chris, sorry.
Well, I just, I can imagine that we're going to be looking at signs with a much denser pixel count than what's available now.
That's already happening.
Yeah.
But that's not really addressing when we have modular components and what the standard sizes are for the various pixel counts. So I don't think that putting a slight bump in there when manufacturing is documented. I mean, I don't think you're talking about trying to circumvent a set of rules, but at the same time, I think it's important that you work with business owners perhaps a little bit closer so that you can draw in profitable businesses that are going to be adding to the tax base, et cetera, et cetera. I think a little bit of leeway when it's documented and you've got a valid reason without going to a variance, I think that's fine.
And I guess just to go back, I would not in the code put anything about manufacturers, because one of the things we're asked all the time in the planning department is, who do you recommend? Like, who do you recommend for an engineer? Who do you recommend for an architect? And sorry, Dean, but I always tell people that we can't recommend anybody because we can't show favoritism to one person or the other.
Right, it's a conflict of interest, and
We're
I
not
realize that, but
against
I was trying to figure out how to. Yeah, well, I mean, I can see working with business owners, but I mean, it's like we always, you set standards and you set rules and you set guidelines, but then everybody wants to wiggle around them all the time. So it's like you just have to just say this is it, and maybe this one needs to be revisited, but everybody. So yeah. So maybe look into that and see what Dana, do all sign makers or businesses, so if they use the same technology, you're saying they all build these, I don't know.
No, not all. Some will custom make to exactly your specifications and some won't, but there's oftentimes cost considerations when you go one route or the other.
Okay, well. All right, so maybe this should just be revisited or gather more information on this one?
I can do some research and get back to the commission and Dana, or the committee, and Dana, if you would like to send me some information, I'll go over it with the director, and then we'll get back to the committee at a later date.
Actually, while we're on this, this table of requirements, I had a comment on that. It seemed to me that almost all of these categories, except for residential, there was a limit of 64 square feet that would require, up to 64 square feet would require staff approval. Well, why repeat that with every category? Why not just make a general statement right at the beginning that says, except for the residential zone, that signs above 64 square feet up to 125 square feet may be either require planning and zoning commission approval or are not allowed. And that then it cuts down on a lot of text in the table and makes it smaller.
And it makes it clearer too.
Yeah.
It's just a flat statement or one blanket statement. I think it makes it, makes it crystal clear too.
And I'll look into that and try to tweak the chart. But with that, I just wanted to make it so if you, like, say, wanted to put up a sign in the central business zone, you just go to that area and look right across, and you had majority of your information regarding sizing requirements right there in front of you.
Oh, sure. But it could just as easily say in the central business zone, for example, anything from 64.1 square feet and above is not allowed. Well, that means that anything up to that requires staff approval. I mean, it doesn't need to be repeated in every zone.
Right. No, I understand.
Or whatever limit we decide on based on Dana's suggestions.
Okay.
Because it just looks like every one of them up to 64 square feet, except for residential, requires staff approval. So that could be just a general statement right at the beginning.
Okay.
Right. That's a little redundant. That's
Yeah.
Okay.
I actually had some comments on the beginning of the wording here. At the beginning, 164-121, all the way up at the top. If you will indulge me. I'm wondering, because this is about signs, but very quickly we talk about signs or awnings. If we're talking about awnings that are used for signs, or are we talking about awnings in general requiring, approval?
We are talking about signs on awnings and for as long as I know, Dean, the application, oddly enough, has been called the application for sign or awning. And Mark and I were talking about possibly just dropping the awning. So your sign permit application, because it's just, I don't know the history behind why it's the application for sign or awning, but that's why that information was there. And we're thinking possibly just remove the awning altogether, but that would be for signs on the awning.
Right.
Yeah.
So the only application that this would make to awnings would be if the awnings were used as a sign.
That is correct.
would it be clear to have a separate section for, and just say, the heading would be awnings used as signs and then have the information there and just either repeat it or whatever changes, would that be clearer than having it mixed up like that?
Well, Christine, I don't think we would need to repeat a lot of things. We could just say that where awnings are used as signs, or where signs are placed on awnings, these regulations shall apply.
Okay, but you clarified that, so I think that's good.
Yeah, because I imagine that most awnings are going to require a building permit anyway. Otherwise, they'll be erected so flimsily that they'll fall down on people's heads.
We do not want that to happen.
Right. Okay, so I have a question also in paragraph D on this page. It reads, the application for sign or awning shall be signed by the applicant and the owner of the property. If the owner of the property cannot sign the application, a signed affidavit will suffice. And I'm wondering, what does that affidavit include? I mean, if the owner can't sign the application, are they going to be required to sign an affidavit? Or is the affidavit something that just the applicant? So I just don't think that it's properly defined.
And Dean, that is a wonderful question. Up until recently, as Dana can probably attest to, I have always mentioned to people that you need to have the wet signature for both the applicant and the property owner. And with reviewing things and with COVID and all, a copy of that would work. But with some people who can't get the application from, like an applicant who can't get it to the property owner, send it to the property owner, they send it back. If the property owner could have a letter or something that gives permission for the applicant to put the signage, to erect that signage on their private property. So something that just says, me, the property owner, gives permission to so-and-so to erect the signage on my property.
All right, so that's similar to the what the county requires for a building permit, an owner contractor affidavit.
Correct.
Now the city already in its applications for water and sewer allocation, it requires that application to be notarized. Suppose we require a sign application to be notarized that that the owner agrees, that is, the affidavit from the owner is notarized, then you don't have to worry about wet signatures.
I don't know if for sign permit, if that would be just too labor intensive for the applicant. Dana, do you have any thoughts from being on the sign industry? Dana, you are muted.
Seems to me that the owner of the business has a lease with the property owner, and what they're allowed to do and what they're not allowed to do is in that lease. And it seems to me that just the signature of the business owner ought to be sufficient.
That's a good point.
Anybody else have any thoughts?
Well, I mean, I have no expertise in this area, but just listening to this conversation, you know, if I'm renting a property because I have a business, a lot of times people will, I don't know, I think the ultimate responsibility winds up with the owner of the property. So if somebody, you know, some business owner who's renting from somebody decides to just sign something, and then I don't know, I just think that the ultimate, it's just my opinion, you know, who's going to be held accountable if the business owner signs something? I guess that person would be responsible for anything financial, but I don't know. I just think it's
Anything that
or
the
at least
sign,
have them notified, have the business owner notified. I mean, I'm
anything
sorry.
that the, anything that the business owner hangs up on the outside of the wall is still within code and is approved by the city. If there is part of that lease agreement that prohibits them from doing something, that's just the feud between the tenant and the landlord. And it's got nothing to do with what is legally you're able to hang on the side of the building in terms of the city of Westminster.
So so you're saying basically, as long as they follow the ordinances or the guidelines, whatever, then where the city of Westminster is out of it and it's between the landlord and that. So what?
Yeah.
I mean,
the
I don't
landlord
know.
does-
Yes, I
yeah.
don't have experience in that. So
Yeah, if the landlord doesn't like it, then, you know, he can take it up with his tenant. It's, and then the question is it okay for him to put them up or is it not?
Right. And if it isn't, you know, then it becomes a dispute between those parties.
Exactly.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that for sure. You know, you've got a business, you're renting from someone. I mean, I'm thinking we're on Main Street, we've been there for a long time now, but when we were going to put up a sign, I didn't go and get an okay from my, from Max Realty. I went through the city and we got the okay, we put up the sign. So I do believe that what Mr. Rogers has said is accurate.
So you guys are basically just saying that the tenant, whoever's applying, is the only signature required or necessary. Is that what it's coming down to?
That
Yeah,
is
I think
correct.
so.
I think so.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. Normally, when we're initiating the whole process, the owner is going to, well, a tenant's going to ask an owner, what they do about the signage. Now, depending on the property, such as larger multi-tenant retail or mixed use, the property owner sometimes will pay for their signage on a large monument sign, something out on the main road. And then the tenant would have to apply, I guess, separately for the signage over their unit, basically. But an owner is going to clarify with the tenant as the tenant asks the owner about signage. And we always say, obviously, you have to fit within code and go by what the county or city says. And then it's between the owner and the tenant as to style and things like that. Because a lot of, again, multi-tenant's going to have more of a uniform style. But yeah, overall, I agree. You don't necessarily need the owner's signature if the tenant is applying, and usually there's already an approval from the owner. And if there isn't, then the owner can hassle the tenant. So I agree with that.
Andrew, maybe there's some precedent set somewhere in some other town, city, whatever, borough, about what that, maybe that would help clear that up. But I mean, just
Yeah.
for more clarification, that's all.
Yeah, I can do some digging on that.
Andrew, are we going down the page? Are we going down the list here?
Whatever the committee, if anybody has a particular item or thing they want to talk about, we can go
Yes.
over anything you would
I
like.
do. I do. So under B, I guess it would be the third page, B, number 1. animated, yes, animated, flashing, blinking, reflecting, revolving. There, stop. There we go. Okay, so that's currently an ordinance.
Yes, that is
So-
currently in the ordinance.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. So I go down Main Street and
Mhm.
I see several businesses that have the, those blinking, flashing, lights, like, lottery. And so is that not a sign that, I mean, why do I see those if the ordinance says that's prohibited? So does that not covered by that?
It would be.
Okay.
We don't actively, I mean, if there's a violation, let us know and we'll go out and look at it.
Well, how can people, I'm just going to say this. There's at least 2 or 3 on Main Street with that runner,
And we can, and Chris, if you give us an address, and
Okay.
we can go out and look at it, because right now that is in the code now. Only for the VEMS signs, which was adopted, I think, back in 2015, that's only on a divided street or highway. So those would not be downtown.
And via VEMS, remind me what,
Visual
Variable
electronic
electronic
message.
message sign.
okay, but I'm talking on Main Street. So,
Yep.
and I'm just asking, is this so you're saying that's not enforced then, number 1. So, okay, I will give you addresses because I'm just curious. I see this and I thought when I'm reading this, I thought that this was prohibited, but yet I see it and I see several. So it amazes me that everybody else misses it, but I will give you addresses, and just because I was curious. So, okay, I will send those along then.
I
Okay.
have, well, Andrew, I've been trying to enter the shared file, the email that you sent, but I can't get in. I have pictures of quite a few of those businesses actually, and those the active signs, the ones that are blinking and either neon or LED. So I have quite a few pictures of those.
And may I ask if it's all right with the committee, instead of, and Patrick, maybe we can talk about this before, pointing blame to any single business. Maybe, try to get it resolved with the business owner before. Just my thought, just to be a little sensitive, because this is being streamed live on YouTube. I just, this is my thoughts, to just be a little sensitive so we're not,
Sure, out of respect
calling
for
attention to
the owners and all.
businesses.
And I just took, I think I have over 80 pictures or so of a lot of random different types of signage, just for examples for us to reference.
Patrick, if you would like, if the committee's all right with that, Patrick, if you want to come in the office tomorrow and we can try to get them over onto the city server.
Yeah, it's fine. I can put them on a USB or whatever, bring my computer. It's fine.
Okay, all right. But I would love to talk about that, but me personally, I just don't want to, be public out there, bashing any particular business.
I don't think we're bashing anything, Andrew. I just think, because I repeatedly hear that we can't do, none of these committees from the city could do any kind of business unless we're live streamed. And that's what we're doing. So now we want to do this in private. So, and I agree, we don't want to bash, but I really do think that this needs to be addressed, because whoever is responsible for enforcing this is not doing their job to do that. And it's there's a lot of it. So that would
Andrew,
be great to get that under control.
to Andrew's point, and not wanting to, mention business names right here, it's probably because, when we discuss stuff like this, even the tone of it almost starts to make it out like these businesses are trying to break the law with the intent that they are. And some of them may not know. Some of them may think, hey, you know what? They got signs like this out there that you can buy. It'll look pretty cool. Lottery signs almost everywhere look like that. So I'll get one too. And if they've had one for a long time and nobody's ever come by and told them anything. So we just want to make sure, I guess, that we don't paint them in a bad light.
I totally agree with you, Mike. I totally agree with you. I guess my question is, you know, if this has been on the books for a while, why is it not enforced? So I think it's time to enforce that, however it needs to be enforced, and not, again, I did not bring up anybody's
Oh, I got you.
particular name, right? So, but I asked about this because I wanted to make sure I understood this ordinance when I'm reading it. So, thank you.
You know, one last thing, Andrew, if it's been on the books for a long time and it's not been enforced, could it be because the people who would be the ones to enforce it, and I don't want to step in any water here that's too murky, but maybe they don't think it's that important of an ordinance. Maybe they think that people should be able to have some of these signs within reason. And yet you got to be careful it doesn't become flashing signs all up and down Main Street. I don't know.
And Mike, that is an excellent question. And the reason for that, actually, the people that would enforce it be the planning department, and we are strapped with so many things to do, and we just have to find the time for that. But I can definitely bring it up with the director, and I mean, we can discuss. Obviously, we want to do everything in an open meeting, but I guess my point with Patrick, just to go through, and maybe we can contact some of the business owners beforehand, but I just, you know, don't want to paint any business in a negative light.
It's understandable. I was going to say, I can show you one real quick that does not have the business, has no identifiable features to it, but it's the sign that she's probably referencing. You want me to show it to you real quick? It's not going to show, it doesn't show anything as to who, where. I'm zoomed in really close to the sign.
I would be interested in that because there's multiple ones down.
This is they have one example, and then I can, again, I'm just not going to show anything that has any name to it.
So Patrick, right now you are a co-host, but when you share your screen, just make sure it's. I'm actually on my phone. Unfortunately, I thought we were going to be meeting in person, so I was at the building when I signed in on my phone. So I'm actually going to show you my computer. So is this the type of, blinking light you're talking about?
Exactly. That runner thing. Yeah. And I'm not even familiar with this one. So
I know exactly where that is.
It's it does well, you'll see, it does blinking designs and things. So I understand how it's can catch people's attention. I mean, that's
I don't even know where that is, that one.
But
I haven't seen that one, but I could send you examples also. And you know what? We're just trying to have the downtown not look like Potterville. So it's just
I totally understand.
They're ordinances. People need to follow them. Period.
Yeah, and Christine, unfortunately, a lot of these requirements are going to be enforced on the basis of complaints. The city don't have the staff to chase around and preempt signs like this. The signs will go up, and then if people complain about them,
No, I agree.
Don't let me put words in your mouth, but
no. I agree. I totally agree, and I know that there are bigger issues in the world than this. But all I'm saying is, this seems like an easy one. This is black and white, and we brought this to the sign committee's attention. So now it's just a matter of whoever goes out to enforce it and say, "Hey, do you know that you can't do this?" and have to take it down. So, and I don't think anybody's going to lose any business because they don't have like blinking lights. So.
Yep.
Oh, I do have another question. So this number one, animated flashing, blinking, whatever, that doesn't include those neon lights that are put in like windows that sort of, they blink and they flash and they do all kinds of stuff. That's not a sign. So that's not included in that, right?
No, that would be. And so if it's
Oh,
in
it
the
is?
window with the intent to draw attention to the business. Now, if it's far back in the, in the business, but if it's right at the window and its predominant purpose is to attract attention from outside the business.
Okay. Because I've seen about like at least 2 or 3 more businesses within the last, I don't know, 6 months or a year. And I understand COVID, but I've seen a lot of businesses on, because I drive that street every single day to and from work, to and from work, to and from work, all over town. Not that I look for this stuff, but I notice it. So I've seen a lot of that also. So, okay. And I wasn't sure how that was covered, if it was covered, if people could just do what they want, or if that's part of the sign thing. So, okay. That's good to know. All right, thank you.
Not a problem. Any questions about, I guess I could say any more questions about 164, 121 for sign permits?
Well, I mean, this one is recently built and it's a beautiful, it's done beautifully. I mean, it's very tasteful, but it obviously has the business name on it. I was going to use it as an example to ask you how this works. I don't think there's any problem with it. I mean, it's only positive. If I could show it, just ask a question.
Sorry. So you said nothing negative about it.
No, not at all. Here, I'll do it. I don't think there's anything negative at all. Everyone knows this one.
Okay.
So, you have what called gooseneck on the top. I don't know how well the screen you can see this, but
Yep.
And then obviously they have their awnings. How does a business? I would imagine this is fine if it's within code. Like I said, I really like the way that they presented their signage. But how do they apply when they have an awning with their name on it, and then a different type of signage? You're gonna have some business has 2 or 3 different styles or types like that.
Okay.
How do they apply? How like we were talking about earlier, with different codes being written separately.
But that's
Just wondering how. Yeah, go ahead.
That's a wonderful question, Patrick. So let's say if business wanted to come in to put up a sign or let's say 3 signs on the front of their business, they would currently come in to the planning department or give us a call, and they would fill out 3 sign permit applications, one for each sign. There would also be a fee for each sign. So if a sign is under 64 square feet, it would be $50. In zones that can go up over 64, under 125, it would be $150. And mainly that's to cover the cost that is associated with staff doing a staff report to the Planning and Zoning Commission. After we review that based off of the city code and development design preference manual and see that it would be allowed. And right now I would review 164, 120, which is general regulations in all zones, and 164, 121, which is on-premise business signs, if it's in that particular zone, in the business zones. And then if it complies with the code, then it would be approved. And that's how they would, and each sign permit has a unique number, as Dana can attest to. And that's the process. Now there's some back and forth that sorry, Dana, as not to point you out, but you are you're from the sign industry, but if there's some things that just need a change, I get back to the designer the designer talks with their client, and the sign comes back and it's changed to the specifications. But that's basically the process. Now, we do tell people that at the end of the process, if you need an electrical permit, you have to go to Carroll County Government because they have reviewers that would review for the electrical permit. And if it's a freestanding sign, we always tell people you need to get a building permit first because there's staff in the city. We don't have staff to review for lateral loads or any of loading on that sign. And we want to make sure that that sign is safely built so it doesn't cause a public hazard.
Sure, safety risk.
Yep.
Okay, because I was just wondering if there any business needed to, or property owner needed to apply separately, or it was all included in one application. Everything's kind of put under one umbrella of a document, you know.
Right.
So also one more quick question on this about, just realized the other photo, if you can see this, the raw bar awning.
Mhm.
Is that considered a sign? Would that be added to the application as signage?
Yes, that would be.
Okay. All right. It's good to know.
Which part of the awning do you consider signage when you're calculating your square footage? Is it the entire
Good
awning or is it
question.
the
Just where-
size? So
just where
that,
the sign is.
so it looks to me like you could sort of draw a rectangle around where it says raw bar and use that fairly accurately. Is that what you're
Whoa.
talking?
Yes, you are
Went
correct.
the wrong way here. Sorry, I was going to go back to the other picture I was using. So that's a good question as to the size. Obviously, the one awning is almost fully covered, and
Yeah,
the
and-
other.
Dana, I think that idea is pretty well explained with the illustrations that Andrew has given us under
Mhm.
164-122. So there you see that, you have a monument sign that's a certain size, but then the sign copy or the sign message is smaller than that. And I
Well,
think the same
that's-
principle would apply to signs on awnings.
Well, that's not entirely true because I could draw a rectangle around that where it says sign message and it would not be as wide as area A and it would not be as tall as area B. It would be, in this case, somewhat less. And when you take a look at the awning for raw bar, that is just down at the very bottom of that awning and not the entire. And the sign that Andrew has shown is calculating the entire sign. So it is different.
They're like the entire size of the awning, basically.
That's exactly right. So based on the sign message with the monument, you would be looking at that awning and calculating the entire face of that, the way this is showing.
Well, no, what I was thinking that the awning size was analogous to the monument sign size, with all the masonry and everything. And that the sign message
Oh, I see what you're
What-
saying.
gets calculated.
I
Right.
see what you're saying. Right. So if that's the way it's calculated, that would make some sense. So just the area where it says raw bar, if that's the rectangle that's calculated rather than the entire face, then I think that's good.
Yep, and Dana, that's what we would do, just the raw
Okay.
bar.
Okay.
So, Andrew, maybe it would be worthwhile to include an illustration of that. Get out your CAD drawing skills and insert that
Right.
into the ordinance.
All right.
Andrew,
not-
I have a question.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, go
So-
ahead, Chris.
What about like, I'm not sure when this particular ordinance went into effect, but what about the signage that is the signage downtown that is not in compliance with that? Are they grandfathered in? Or, I mean,
If you
Just-
did not get a sign permit, there would be no grandfathering. And,
Okay,
or,
that's
so
one, that's one. Okay, but what if,
oh, sorry,
okay.
it wouldn't be a legal non-conforming sign you would have to have a permit. And then if the code changed after you received a permit, so the sign code changed, then it would be a legal non-conformity. But if you never got a permit and the sign was built during the time the code was in effect, then there would be it wouldn't be it would not be a legal non-conformity.
And is there an easy way to figure that out with certain signage that's downtown or in the city?
I would have to look through all the documents and
Right.
from a
Okay.
while ago, they're all right now on paper.
And I know you have better things to do than that, but I'm just asking the questions for clarification. So
Mhm.
there is a way, if we say business XYZ, this is clearly a compliance with, since with this ordinance. And there's a way to look at that. Okay,
Yeah, we can, we can pull documents.
okay. All right, I just was curious about that. Thank you.
That's a good question. Thank you, Chris.
Andrew, I've got a comment on a paragraph that's below where these sign illustrations are. On paragraph F, I puzzled over the wording of that for quite a while, and I think it would be a lot clearer if the words square footage were replaced with sign area. So if it reads, where a property fronts on more than one street, only the sign area computed for each street frontage shall face that street.
That makes sense since we talked about sign area and we had those diagrams.
Yeah, I just to say only the square footage computed for each sign frontage, that's a little ambiguous.
Anybody else have any thoughts on that?
Say that one more time, Dean. I think getting the word sign, like if we talked about the sign square footage, as long as it's clear that that's what you're talking about, I guess it doesn't really matter which words you choose, but I think you're right about the square footage. Somebody could confuse that with the square footage of who knows what.
Of each street frontage.
Right,
So,
right.
yeah, I just thought it would be more understandable if it read, where a property fronts on more than one street, only the sign area computed for each street frontage shall face that street. So in
That
other
makes a
words,
lot of
what this is talking about is you calculate what the allowable sign area is based on each street frontage exclusive to that frontage.
Right, so if you're at a corner lot, you would have, let's say you had 10 linear feet and you could, in the B business zone, then you could have 30 square foot of sign area on that road. And if you had, let's say 100 on the other, then you could have 300 square feet of sign area,
Right.
which would have to
Well,
be broken up into
in
separate
theory.
signs though. Right. And not to butt in, but I just wanted to, so everybody just to be cognizant of time that it is 7 o'clock. We can definitely go on longer, but I just wanted to let everybody know the time, just in case you only had an hour allotted for the meeting.
Appreciate it. I'm good to continue.
Okay. But if everybody else is good with, we can definitely look into replacing square footage with sign area, just to see how that reads throughout the ordinance.
Sounds good.
Are there any other comments on 164, 121, and 164, 122?
At the bottom of the table in 162, or 122 rather, I'm sorry, 123. There's an asterisk that talks about 127C.
Mm-hmm.
I assume that we'll get a chance to review that in a future meeting.
Yes. Yep.
All right. Also, just below that, tenant is spelled wrong. It's spelled right a couple places. It's spelled wrong a couple places. And it only has
Okay.
one N.
All right. Thank you, Dean.
We mustn't have any spelling problems in our ordinance.
I even went through and did spell check, and it didn't. It picked a couple things up in the on the left column, but nothing in the right.
It's a terrible thing, isn't it, Dana, when a sign is spelled wrong?
It is. And we see that from time to time.
Sometimes on purpose.
As long as it's
Oh.
not mine, it's okay.
One other thing that I had a comment on is just below this, where it talks about the projecting signs and has an illustration there. But just above that, it talks about blade signs. And
Oh.
I think that we're talking about the same thing.
You are correct. Yes, that is. You are correct.
So why don't we be consistent then?
Yep. I will change projecting to blade, or blade to projecting, but I'll keep it consistent.
Blade signs sounds a little dangerous.
Okay. Any questions, any more questions on 122? And 123, I believe.
What's the purpose for not allowing a blade sign to be internally illuminated? Lots of light boxes are hung perpendicular to the road so that they can get viewage as people are driving by.
My thoughts on that, Dana, and that's a wonderful question, is just to minimize as much light as possible from coming over or going over the property line and onto the other, because typically in downtown you have the more narrower properties, and just to make sure no light trespass goes onto somebody else's property.
Also,
Um,
oh, go ahead, Dana, I'm sorry.
Well, what I was going to say is it's pretty easy to not over illuminate a light box, and I agree with that. I mean, I think the balance that that we should be looking for is to allow business owners to advertise their business at the same time. It's nice to keep the look and feel that Westminster proper has, and it's nice to have that small town feel to it. But when you take a look at other areas where light pollution is really bad, not in Westminster, but coming down 695 in the Beltway, there's lots of car dealerships that are over illuminating their parking lots, and that casts obnoxious light out onto 695. And that's, I mean, and that's 10 times more light than what we're talking about with a blade sign that would be hanging out and possibly advertising a business.
Right.
Maybe,
Oh,
go
go
ahead,
ahead, Chris.
well, I guess I'm gonna put my Historic District Commission hat on again and say, I have, been to or lived in different towns, cities, et cetera, that the historic downtown does not allow that. If they allow blade signs, they have to be illuminated with like gooseneck lighting or some other kind of spotlighting, and it looks lovely and you can't miss it. So, I mean, I think, and I don't know how, and I guess it would have to be, you would have to make you'd have to make a differentiation between the historic districts and then, 140 or something like that. But I can see where, you might allow more of that on 140 or at the mall or something as opposed to downtown. So maybe that's part of the issue also.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I was just trying to show a quick example. It's hard to do this once. This downtown photo here of, quite a few blade signs. It looks like it's probably in their code. Not all awnings, but every store has a blade sign.
What town is this? Well,
This is just online. I just pulled up images
Oh,
of
okay,
blade
yeah.
signs for examples. And I'm sorry, hold on. Running low on battery. There we go. Yeah, so just showing examples. I mean, there are many that are tastefully done. Actually, competitor of ours is Atlas on Main Street. And there's a lot. It's one that's, I can't remember what kind of lighting actually they're using, if there is lighting at all, but it's almost like a steel, like a laser cutout. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Yeah, I agree with Patrick on that.
It's tastefully done. It looks great. The industrial look. A lot of buildings are going to these industrial looks where you see the I-beams, and there's a couple blade signs there, but these are like almost like I had up earlier. Sorry, let me go back to the typical one you see, almost like a Starbucks that has the interior. It's backlit basically on both sides, or interior light. But then the others, like this one, it's up top, small LEDs shining straight down. I think, Chris, you might have mentioned that too, like that kind of stick lighting. That's not too much at all. That, it doesn't cast a lot of light beyond the actual signage.
I mean, it seems to me that there are lots of choices for business owners to choose from. So I don't think we're hamstringing anybody with any of this.
No, there's just like across the top right here, you see it's lit, street, storefront, retail, building. Just some of the larger mixed use now, where there's retail on the lower level and apartments a few levels up top. You have long, really long blade signs coming down the side of the building. So I guess that then will also depend on how large it is, the surface area, not square footage anymore. What was the term, Dean, you're using now? You're putting on there?
Sign area.
Sign area, yeah.
Maybe we could reach out to some of the towns or cities, little small cities that we like what they do and just see what their ordinances are.
Yeah, Frederick's one of them.
Yeah, Frederick's great. That's yes. Frederick's.
Yeah, they've done well with their downtown.
Yes, it's lovely.
Andrew, I'd like to point out that there's one requirement in here.
What page?
Oh, it's the very at the very bottom of what we've been looking at. Yeah, right there. Letter I. That contradicts what blade signs do. So, should that say building signs except blade signs shall be placed parallel to the face of the building?
I see what you're saying, Dean. That's a very good point. With building signs, the intent were wall signs, but we can look into distinguishing building signs, the wall signs from blade signs. But that is a good point. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Any more thoughts
Anything in
on
here about signs not being placed above building parapets or on roofs? Is that still in there?
we have in there? I believe I'm pretty sure only on the first floor. I know, Dean, you're referring, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're referring to it was in the standards for renovation Westminster where it talked about no higher than 1 inch below the second story windowsill line.
Right.
I know that's in here.
Well, and it's in the old wording right at the beginning here. Where was it? 164, 121A1. Project not more than 12 inches above the parapet wall or roof line. And I don't remember seeing that in the new wording.
Where is it?
Go all the way up to the top.
A1. There we are. There we are. Or A. Yep, 12 inches above the parapet wall or roof line. I thought we had that in there. I remember discussing it. The only thing we have that is a good point, Dean, because we do have signs on buildings located in the downtown business zone, central business zone, central commerce zone, and mixed use infill zone shall not be located above the first floor, but that is for downtown, not universally through the whole city. But that is a good point. I will definitely make a note of that. Thank you, Dean. Any other questions with any of these three sections or comments?
I guess I have a random question about, I mean, I kind of touched on this earlier as to, especially downtown, and there really aren't many, but there are a couple. There's just a few. I'm going to try to find a good example of this. Again, it's use something that's corporate. So we had a tenant that signed a lease into a building that they never ended up moving into, but they were going to apply for a large, backlit, not neon, but it's definitely a corporate looking sign. Again, let me try to find the right picture to use here. And then just wondering about how to address that in the downtown setting, because it can be a little obnoxious looking. It's a little almost not overwhelming. Let me find the right one. I don't know why it's not.
And would this be internally lit, Patrick?
Internally lit.
Okay, and we mentioned about having it just externally lit in downtown.
There was something in the renewal standards document that I recall that prohibited signs that were that kind of advertised a product, like that people would get from, say, Pepsi, and then it would have their business on it, would have a big Pepsi logo.
Dean, you're absolutely correct. Yep, that is in the standards for renovation Westminster.
Is that something that we want to apply to all of Westminster? Is that the kind of thing that you're talking about, Patrick?
Potentially, possibly. Here, I'll show you. I'm only thinking of a couple that are in downtown right now, but large, if you can see this, obviously this is, we're corporate, it's out on 140, but there's, large block letters, internally lit, but I'm just wondering how, I want to use an example, but I'm not going to right now. But like this, say Mattress Warehouse on the front of the old firehouse.
Patrick, could you share the example you want to? Can you email that to us? So we can
share it privately.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, those kind of signs aren't really what I was talking about. I was talking about the kind that, that advertise a product that, a business may get the sign for a reduced price because this manufacturer gets to advertise their product on the sign. Those signs that like Mattress Warehouse or
I understand what you're
those are
saying
actually
now.
the business itself that's in there.
Right. No, I understand what you're saying. That's why I just pulled this up real quick. Just and you used Pepsi as an example.
I think I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
Right.
It could
Yeah,
just as easily apply to, Miller Lite.
Yeah.
Right.
Andrew, while we're talking about this, and I didn't see anything in here, and I may have just missed it. What about signs that are painted on the glass of the windows of, like the windows of that, like, are there,
I have a picture of that I can share with you as well. I've got a question on that. So like four windows across the top of a building, and each window has a big block, window paint letter on each one, spelling out, if it were my Pat's Pro Shop and I have golf, GOLF. One letter on each window, but obviously advertising, and it's not, I mean, is that signage? Is it going to be considered signage?
Yes, and that's a good question, Chris and Patrick. I am looking, here it is on, and let me pull up do a screen share on number F, or letter F. Let me go down here at the last column, the last section. So signs located on or less than 6 inches from a show window surface shall not exceed 30% of the window surface area. However, that is show window and not a window if it's up on the second or third floor, but I mean, that would still count for signage. Definitely, if you had and also in the downtown area, it couldn't be located above the first floor. So that would be against the ordinance.
Right, but what about-
Andrew,
what about
look
ones-
at the, look at paragraph E right above that.
Oh,
Yep.
well, then there are multiple, you know, examples of non-compliance, if that's the case. So, okay, that's interesting.
And that's
So in
with-
other words, signs, you can't put signs in the window about your, you know, the name of your business or whatever, and you can't paint anything on your business,
you would need,
on your windows.
on the first floor, you would need a sign permit. But above that, because and E is what's being proposed to be added. That's not in the ordinance. What's in the ordinance talks about above, and in downtown would be above it can't be above 1 inch below the second story windowsill line.
Okay,
So there has to be an inch, all signs have to be lower than an inch below that windowsill line on the second floor.
So just an organizational thing. If we're going to have line item E, signs are prohibited on all windows except, it would be nice if as subcategories underneath it directly, here are where they are allowed, so that you don't have to go hunting through the document to figure out where it is and looking in 3 or 4 different places to make sure you've covered your bases.
That's a good point, Dana. Any other questions, comments?
I'm running to get my power cord actually for my
Yeah.
phone.
Yeah.
Loses power, so.
Just a thought on some other comments earlier, the idea of maybe finding out what Frederick is doing, for example, with their sign ordinances, because the comment was that Frederick is thriving. It's a great place, and it is. There's no argument about that. I don't think you can just look at the sign ordinances to figure out what's making that work down there and thinking that we can just replicate sign ordinances and we're going to end up with the same economic result that Frederick has. There's a lot of other things that they're doing too. So just looking at the sign ordinances is not going to put us on equal footing with what they're doing. I think we need to figure out maybe some of the other things, and it's certainly a bigger discussion for Andrew to be looking at. But all I'm saying is mimicking that is not going to solve all the problems to bring businesses into Westminster.
no, you're absolutely right, and that's a component of it. But Frederick, for example, like Ellicott City and some other towns, they have a great historic district with guidelines that are adhered to and enforced. So it's all part of the puzzle. So maybe if we start putting it together, then, can get, maybe we can have, maybe it'll be more robust downtown.
Any other questions or comments from anybody?
I think this has been a good discussion.
Oh, yes. Yep. I agree.
Yep.
And I thank you all for that. Each of you were picked because you have a distinct, diverse background. And that will help us greatly putting together this sign ordinance. So thank you for your insights. Thank you for your time. And thank you for all you do to help us. Very appreciated.
Okay.
I assume that you'll send out a poll to determine when we meet again.
Yes, I will do that, Dean. And the last couple chapters, or sorry, some sections aren't that intense, but I just want to have time to go through this, make corrections, and bring some substance back to you all for your review.
Okay. Okay,
Very
very
good.
good. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Not a problem. You take care, everybody, and I will say we are adjourned.
Bye-bye.
All
Bye.
right, guys. Thanks.
See ya.
Hey, Andrew,
Yes, hold on one, Patrick.
I know
I will
you're
call
recording,
you.
so
I will
Yeah.
call you.
sounds good.
Take care, Patrick.
All right, you too. Thanks. Bye.